Here we are looking at another for loop that is dealing with the pointers directly. So if you remember before, we had that I and we were using to reference different elements on that array. Here we are doing a different approach. So we are defining our array. We are defining a pointer that is of type character, and we are setting the value of that pointer basically to point to the first element of that array. So now our pointer is basically referencing the first element. And then in our for loop, instead of referencing each element by I, we are directly referencing it by the pointer, and every time we are moving this pointer. So we are directly updating the value of the pointer. So this is a different approach and the result is exactly the same. If we are doing that in code, you see that we have our basically the base address in S0, and we have that 0 to 6 basically for our loop, and that value that we are setting. So we are setting the value here, but this is the important part, that you see that when we are setting the value, we are using S0, and that's basically our pointer that is getting that element that we are changing. So now here directly we are adding 1 to the S0. So every time we are incrementing S0 by 1. And that is gonna basically move that pointer every time by 1 element. And then of course we are adding our S1, which is our the I just for the loop, and we are having the same condition. So that's a different approach to do this pointer and basically dealing with the array. So here we have the same idea, except that we are using basically we are dealing with the int array. We have a still 6 element, we have the same pointer of type int this time. We are getting the pointer, we are setting it to the first element, and that's another syntax, by the way. So arrays are basically pointers also. And here we are basically setting I to that pointer value, and we are directly incrementing the pointer. So when we have this thing here, it's basically moving that pointer to the next element. So there is one big difference though. Before we are dealing with a character array, and here we are dealing with the integer array. So the size of a character is 1 byte, the size of an integer is 4 bytes. And if you see here in the C++ code, every time we are doing plus plus, and here also we are doing plus plus. But the difference is that C++ knows this is an integer array because we are defining it as an integer here. If we are translating this code, we have the same thing, except that we are moving our array by 4. So when we are incrementing, if you remember before it was a 1 here, but this time because it is an integer array, we are incrementing it by 4. And that is the difference between the character and integer if you are working basically directly in MIPS.